Okay, let's do it. Okay. Hello, welcome once again to the Seven Sisters Pubcast, coming to you live from Seven Sisters in Toulouse, France. My name's Paul.
And I'm Alan.
This is Alan. We're back again, me and you again, Alan, back into the breach.
Love it.
How you doing?
Love it. Another day in paradise, my friend.
Another day in paradise, exactly. Yeah. Well, the pub is.
Yeah, it is. It is a little slice of paradise.
It is paradise, is it not? Pubs.
But you know why I say that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's funny because actually it's a little bit ironic. Because my older brother used to always say, or still probably does. I don't see him that often, but like, another day in paradise, right? But he always said it ironically.
Yeah.
Like life is shit. Like, and he was like, but he would say it like it's another day in paradise, right?
Yeah.
Right. Ironically, and I'm like, it kind of pissed me off. And so I stole that from him, and ever since I've been like, paradise is wherever I am.
I like it. I like it. That's a
and
good attitude.
That's the attitude I like to have in life.
Well,
right?
it's it's a good attitude.
It's another day in paradise because paradise is where I am, right? And just life is so fucking short and brutal.
Yeah.
You have to just try to take a positive spin on it.
Well, there was a phrase, I don't know who was it. There was a rapper that said this once, but Dose One, I think it was him who said it first. But I'm not sure if he's quoting someone. It's the older I get, the more life starts to make sense, and the less I care.
I love that.
Yeah.
That is gorgeous.
Isn't it good?
The older I get, the more life makes sense, and the less I care.
Yeah.
Oh, that is gorgeous. I'm
nice,
stealing that.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I'm stealing that. As an older guy, right? As an older person, right? I'm in middle age, really. I could be like, oh, I'm just right. And it's very easy.
Yeah.
I'm not very much like that because I read a lot and I like to talk to young people. I like to have new thoughts. I love like liberal thinking, like the methodology of liberal thinking. Though today I definitely find myself a lot more conservative than I was when I was younger because I realized, oh shit,
I saw a clip of I watched Shane Gillis, stand-up comedian, American stand-up comedian, like really, really great, like top of the game at the moment. His special on Netflix, Beautiful Dogs, it's called. Check it out.
Beautiful Dogs.
Shane Gillis.
Shane Gillis. I don't know that one.
He makes a point similar to what you've just said. He was like, he's not a Republican, but he can feel himself.
Yeah,
feel himself kind of.
It's
like
tough.
You're not when you're younger. You're all liberal and you're Democrat or whatever. You're like, yeah, but then as soon as you get older, and that's the point. It's like he's like your dad is. He goes, your dad is a Republican, but he wasn't. When he was younger, when he was like in his teenage years, he was smoking pot and
absolutely.
drinking.
Yeah,
he was going out and having fun. Like
you're
not a Republican when you're younger. As you get older, you get more and more conservative. So yeah,
and that's it. But I mean, there are young Republicans and
It's
there
just
are
quite strange.
old liberals, right?
Yeah.
It's all about the reality is that it's not two-sided, right?
Yeah.
Authoritarianism is like, that sucks. We know from history, like more people have died from authoritarianism than like almost anything, right?
Okay.
Like you think about like communist Russia, communist China, like both liberal and fascist regimes, right?
Yeah.
The Holocaust, like these things, like millions and millions and millions of people murdered, right, for political causes in order to create these societies that either conformed to, if you go to the right side, right, you go to the, if you go to the top right corner, right, you have conservatism, which is one, like the individualism is the most important, right? Enforced authoritarianism, right? You get fascism.
Yeah.
So that's the top right corner is fascism. And that says like, oh, and it's easy to relate to like, what everybody knows is fascism is like Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany was all about like, we're better than them. The worst people are the Jews. The best people are the Aryans. But what's obvious if you think about that in the long term is the whole like, first they came for these people and I didn't say anything. And then they came for these people and I didn't say anything. And then they came for these people and I didn't say anything. In the end, they came for me and I was all alone.
Yeah.
Right. And the reality is that fascism by its nature says like, oh, we're going to team up until we beat everybody else. And then as soon as we've gotten everybody else beat, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. Right?
Yeah.
You know, and that's the end point of fascism. But equally bad is the other side. You say like, well, we want equality. Everybody should be the same. Right? And you go like, this is the liberal idea. And you go into socialism, but then you go into like enforced socialism is communism.
Yeah.
Right. Where no one has anything about, there's no individual value. And that means that what happens, you start doing these things where you remove the individuality of people and you have to enforce it. That means it literally, you know, there's stories of like in communist Russia and communist China where they like killed all the smart people.
Yeah, I remember seeing that wasn't Pol Pot? Didn't he do that? I don't know how true this is. I remember Ricky Gervais saying something like he killed all the intelligent people, and the way that he worked that out was everyone wearing glasses.
Oh.
But then Ricky Gervais makes the point. It's like, well, if they were intelligent, they would have taken their glasses off when they saw you coming.
Right.
Like, oh, here comes Pol Pot, glasses off.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah,
and I'm sure a lot of people did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what we need though. We need an alien invasion. We need an Independence Day type alien invasion. Bring all the governments together, and then once we defeat the aliens, we'll be living in harmony.
So
it's as simple as that.
Like
I've solved world politics.
But I mean, like it's interesting. We months ago we talked about this a little bit about aliens, right? I talked about the three body problem.
Oh yeah, and I still haven't finished that book.
Right. And
that was like fucking 4 months ago.
And the dark forest, right? And the dark forest theory about aliens is like basically, it is more likely that we encounter aliens that will annihilate us than not.
Okay.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Like fundamentally, it's a scary thing. Like aliens, we shouldn't be looking forward to aliens. We should be deeply concerned about aliens. And
you think like literally like deeply concerned that?
I mean, like,
or do you mean like it's not like an imminent threat?
No, not about imminency. It's
just if we're thinking about aliens as a whole, we should be very wary of.
Well, so I mean, like, what is an interesting question, right? An interesting philosophical question of life is like, what is the fundamental end goal of humanity? Like, what is your personal responsibility to humanity? Like, right?
I couldn't tell you. That's beyond my pay grade.
Like, so, on the conservative side, and very classically, one of the most famous classical science fiction authors is Robert Heinlein.
Okay.
And he was quite conservative in the way he wrote. Like, I mean, you've heard of like Starship Troopers.
Oh yeah.
Right? So like Starship Troopers is a story about like the invasion of the bugs, kind of, right?
Yeah.
But what is really interesting is that if you read the book, the movie is terrible and amazing at the same time.
It's so bad. It's great, yeah.
And great, right?
Yeah. But I don't know, surely that was tongue in cheek though. That was intentional, wasn't it? Starship Troopers.
Yes and no, right? So, but actually the thing is like the book is not written in tongue in cheek like that at all,
right?
But it also is. So he's a political commentary, right? And what the story is that World War III happens, right? And we nuke the shit out of everybody, and we're fucked, right? And society starts to like reform, but we're in tough shape, and that's when the first like bug invasion happens, right? The bugs come to Earth, and they're fucking us up. And so what happens is people who were in the military before naturally become leaders in order to protect society and protect humanity.
Yeah.
Right. And because the military become the leaders, they're like, well, I only trust other military people. So they put the people who have served in front. And what happens out of that is they create a new society where you basically there's a worldwide Bill of Human Rights, right? But for example, the Bill of Human Rights does not include the right to vote.
Okay.
In order to vote, you have to be a citizen, and you have all the rights of a human being without being a citizen. But as a citizen, you have the right to vote. In other words, you have a right to like change the future of humanity, right? And the fundamental idea is that you need to invest your own value into the outcome of humanity and prove it in order to be worthy of the right to vote. So like and the way they do that is like the simplest way to do that is to like serve, right? So if you go into the military and you fight the bugs with like, you know, a 50% chance of dying, right? Fighting the bugs, then you basically said like, I put my life on the line for the human race. Therefore, I have a right to guide the human race, and I'm going to be able to vote in the future, right? And that's fundamentally this idea is like, you know, today we have this mentality of like, you know, democracy is great, but democracy is also like, yeah, it's very interesting because like when democracy started to become the de facto like glory type of government in the world, a lot of the writing that was done in that period was written by like American founding fathers, right? And like the Federalist, Anti-Federalist Papers, writings by Ben Franklin, these guys who wrote all this stuff, like they really spent a lot of time thinking about like how do we respect the value of of humanity and things like this, and it's so interesting reflecting on like, oh, you know, who has the right to vote and why, and why it was done the way it was. And today we have like a modern feminist view of like, oh, men were trying to keep women down, but there's another side to it, which is like, well, originally it was just landowners, like not even all men, right? It was those who took the responsibility for other people had the right to vote.
Yeah.
And it was piece by piece given out to everybody. And there's definitely benefits to that because even the smallest voice should be heard on a level, but also like how much voice, like we like, it's like flat earthers should have a voice, but we should have the right to not listen to them. Right.
Oh yeah.
Like, you know,
although no, you should listen to them because it's phenomenal entertainment. Although it's very infuriating. Oh. It's infuriating at the same time.
I try not to let that stuff infuriate me. I try to think. That's why I try to think about like what makes people do that. Like what makes people go into those kind of perspectives.
I was going to ask you because last time we spoke about you brought up TED Talks. And we didn't go into that. Do you have any favorites? Do you have any because I haven't watched many. I'll be honest with you. I've watched like 2 or 3. I watched
many good ones.
I watched the one about the guy. Do you remember the guy who started with a paperclip and ended up with a house on eBay years ago? He kind of like just did a swap and then he kind of that was quite a funny
thinking
one.
about it, like a couple come to mind. One of my favorites is, I can't think of his name, but he does a speech about speaking, about rhetoric.
Yeah.
And he uses his own rules of speech writing to write a speech about speech writing for TED Talk to teach people how to use rhetoric ideas in the way they speak in order to be convincing, and using like rule of 3 to like if you enforce something 3 times, it's like really like, and you change it, you're like absolutely fantastically stupefying, right? In creating like these and using alliteration
because it is a skill, isn't it? A massive skill being able to talk in front of people.
It's
amazing. And keep them captivated as well.
Yeah,
keep people interested.
Oh, it's difficult and beautiful. It's like, I actually love it. Right.
I'm thinking back to school whenever you did presentations in front of the class. Like when I was really young, I didn't like that, but there was like a switch. I don't know. It must have been when I was about 12 or 13 when I just suddenly
tell you the moment.
I suddenly thought, no, this is cool because everyone's not that I'm like I love being the center of attention, but it's quite fun having everyone like kind of like listening to you.
Mine's literally
I don't know what it is.
Mine's literally the opposite of that.
Ah, okay.
Like. So I can literally tell you the moment where I was crushed. I was in high school. I think it was 11th grade or something like that. And we were in a physics class. And I'm really good at physics, right? Like, I mean, this is like my favorite subject, right?
Yeah.
And we had a group quiz. And everybody we were sat at these tables. And most tables had 4 people, but we happened to have 5 at the time, and they had mixed everybody up. So I was sitting at the table with 5 people, 3 girls, like a hunky jockey guy, and me, the nerd, right?
Oh yeah.
And we had like a 10.
It was like the Breakfast Club, basically.
Like a little bit of that. Yeah. Like so. That's funny. The relation. So. the thing was like we all got this. We're like, whatever the answer we put down, everybody gets the same grade in the group.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So it became this quiz that was going to go on our grades, and there were like either 5 or 10 questions, but like basically, I knew everything but one, the right answers, but we got like 20% because while I knew the right answer, nobody was listening to me.
Oh shit.
Because the guy was like was a charismatic kind of like, you know, like, and the girls are like, oh, like seems like he knows what he's talking about. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I do know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And like, but nobody would listen to me. And I had this like really like crushing realization that it doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how much you know if you can't communicate it to other people.
Yeah,
and literally from that point, like so much of my life became about communication. I mean, I fucking became a communications engineer.
Yeah.
Right. That's for other reasons and everything like that. But what happened out of that is like, okay, I'm not going to let this happen anymore. What I'm going to do is I'm going to learn to speak to people, right? And learn to talk to people and learn to communicate better. And so I started and I'm like, I don't know how. I don't know what to do, right? But I just said, okay, well, I'm gonna every time there's a group presentation, I'm gonna volunteer to do the presentation.
Yeah.
Right. To force myself into that situation.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I felt like my dad had some books on NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and that's super interesting. So all through my 20s, I like read and like learned and the psychology of this stuff. And even to this day, I still read stuff that is about understanding and improving communication and understanding how and why people communicate to each other. You know, everything from body language to tonality. You know, how we communicate and like the emphasis that we put on things.
Oh yeah.
Make things serious and real.
Oh yeah. No, I love the body language. The body language thing as well. That goes back to what we were talking about before. The whole true crime, and interrogations and things. There's a YouTube channel. He's called JCS, Jim Can't Swim, Criminal Psychology.
Interesting.
And it's fantastic. And unfortunately, YouTube's taken a lot of their videos down, but there's a different guy on YouTube who's uploaded them again. I'm going to put the links in the description. But it's unreal when they break down how people, especially guilty people, when they're being interviewed, and like the body language and there's the way they act. The TED talk I was going to bring up as well was a guy called Alex Honnold, Honnold. He's a guy who he's a climber. He's the world's best climber. And there's a documentary from 2018, I think. It's called Free Solo.
I've heard of it.
Where he climbs, so El Capitan.
El Capitan, yeah.
In Yosemite
Yeah,
Park?
I think it's in Yosemite, yeah.
In Yosemite Park, El Capitan, it's like a sheer face of it's like a kind of cliff, like a mountain, whatever, and it's 3,000 feet. Yeah, 3,000 feet, and he climbs it without ropes.
Yeah.
And his friends.
Insane.
It is
amazing.
It's the most ridiculous thing you'll ever see. Like I know there's that whole kind of like, well, you know, if he falls from 30 feet, it's gonna have the same outcome as if he falls from 2,300 feet, or whatever. Yeah,
but there's the whole tiring part of it.
It is unreal, and it's not just that. It's like it's the fact that he normally does that on his own. He'll just go off on his own. The guy's like his mentality is incredible.
I saw an interview with him, right? Where he's like, or either it was an interview of him or someone else was talking about him in an interview about him climbing up and realizing halfway up that he forgot the chalk.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, you're fucked.
And he's fucked. But like, and he's like, go like there's 2 other guys that are climbing with ropes, right? And they're like, hey guys, like I forgot my chalk. Do you guys have some chalk? And they're like, oh here, and like take our thing. And they're like, okay, I'll leave it for you at the top.
Yeah, there's something. I think that he broke the record as well for the quickest climb of that El Capitan, and the thing is, he does it. The free solo thing. The documentary is amazing. You've got to watch it because they're talking about how normally he does it on his own, and obviously you've got to be severely in the zone. when you're doing this, when you're climbing like that. And so when you've got people in your line of sight filming you and drones buzzing around, like they're thinking, how are we going to film this? Because not only because if we put him off, he falls, and we've fucking filmed his death as well.
Yeah.
So it's there's that whole kind of conundrum that they've got to think about when they're organising.
Oh my gosh!
But he plans that route,
like
obviously. But he plans the route meticulously. Like he knows exactly at every point of that climb where his hand's going to go, what grip he's going to use, blah 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 blah. But it's still fascinating. But yeah, so that documentary is great, and his TED talk as well, when he talks about, because he's quite a strange guy. Like he's not like weird, but you can tell he's like.
He's built a certain way.
He's built differently.
Yeah.
He's built different. Mentally, he's built in a completely different way to everyone else. But he's an insane athlete. That's
the thing, is like I was saying earlier, is like what's one of the most important things in life is to realize is that we're all built a little bit differently.
Yeah.
One of the most valuable perspectives in life is just simply the idea. You not only have, DNA that's one in forever.
Yeah.
Right. But also, you also are born at a specific time in the history of time that is a limited window. And there are opportunities, no matter who you are, where you are, what you are, anything, right? There are literal opportunities that will come to you that will never exist ever again, in all of time and space, right? And you literally are like a beautiful flower in the existence, a gemstone.
Thank you, Alan.
In the universe, and it does apply to you,
that's
and to everyone else,
and you, mate, and you.
Fuck yeah, I'm a beautiful flower.
Oh, you are a beautiful flower. No, you're a redwood. That's what you are. You're a giant kind of king of the forest, mate. That's what you are.
That's fucking lovely. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you are. You're not intimidating.
Like
big and beautiful.
I tell you something. Like I went. It was 2015 to Sequoia National Forest.
I'd love to
California.
Go. Yeah.
And I grew up with like stories of Paul Bunyan and the big redwood trees and things like this. And I was like, I'd always wanted to go, but I was like, it's not important, right? But as I did this big road trip with a girlfriend at the time, we went, and I have to say, I came back and I was like, people ask me like, what was the best part of your trip? And I was like, the redwood trees.
Yeah.
Because I expected a lot, right? But when you have high expectations and your expectations are blown away.
Wow. Yeah, I can only imagine it.
I'm having chills. Like when you go to a tree, right? I'm a big guy. I know you give a tree a hug, and you're just like this thing. I am so minuscule. Compared to this living creature.
Yeah.
In front of me.
That's something
so beautiful.
That's something I love about nature and getting out into nature, to feel to feel completely insignificant when you're like in amongst the mountains, or I can imagine it's the same when you're next to a huge redwood tree. You're
or
like
lying on your back in the nature when you're looking up at the sky.
Yeah,
and you look up into the sky, and a satellite goes by, and you look in between two stars. Right? You see two stars in a truly dark place, right?
Yeah.
Every time if you stare at two stars, you're gonna find another star in between them, and another one.
Yeah.
And just like they're dim and what's amazing is that if you could see all of the stars that existed in all directions, right? Then there would be no darkness in the sky.
Yeah.
But because they're so far away, they're so dim, the light doesn't reach us with intensity enough to see it.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting about how the universe is so unimaginable. Literally, like we say unimaginable, we and as a joking way, but the truth is, it is incomprehensible how big the universe is.
Well, you couldn't even comprehend how big the sun is. Like our sun, like that's you can't imagine that. So anything else is.
And sometimes you like come across these Instagram and these TikToks that are like some guys like we know the sun isn't that big. If it was that big, it would be bigger in the sky. And it's like,
Yeah.
you are such a fucking idiot.
Wait, remind it's that. Did you ever watch Father Ted? Father Ted is like
It sounds familiar.
It was a TV show about priests in Ireland.
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Mid-late 90s. But there's a really famous clip because one of them's quite dim, and it just kind of cuts to them in a caravan, and Father Ted's got a little toy cow, and he's going, "This one is small. Those ones are far away," and he's like having to explain it to this guy.
Wow.
And it's the same sort of thing, isn't it? It's like, the sun would be bigger. It's like, yes, but it's 94 million miles away. So
yeah.
I saw something earlier as well, earlier this week, I think, about the biggest solar flare recorded. I don't think it was the biggest ever recorded. Or was it the biggest for a long time?
It's for a long time. Yeah, we're in a high end of the solar cycle, or maybe we're in the low end of the solar cycle when the solar flare is the highest.
But I can't remember what it said. This is now turned into a really bad anecdote because I can't remember what they said. But because of those solar flares, like once those kind of solar winds,
it's a CME. It's called a coronal mass ejection.
Yeah. So when those solar winds arrive in England,
it will disrupt communications.
When it comes to
blow up satellites and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. So my first satellite that I worked on was called STEREO, Solar Terrestrial Relations Observatory. And that was 2 satellites that we launched from Earth, right? And they go out around the sun to take like stereographic pictures so we can understand coronal mass ejections or solar flares. So coronal mass ejections is like, for the corona, like the sun explodes off and then it shoots off like this pillar of gas and energy. Like the sun is literally throwing off atoms, and that's solar wind, like not just photons, right? Which are, energetic particles, like particle and wave at the same time, but actual atoms of like ionic atoms, like hydrogen atoms, like all the way up to like even like iron atoms, like coming at us. And so these ions come out and they're traveling like very fast, not the speed of light fast. The photons are traveling at the speed of light, but everything else is traveling at some, high rate of speed. So you have these ions that come, and like if you have one atom by itself, it can like go inside of stuff and bounce around, right?
Yeah.
And so what happens is these things will go inside of stuff, bounce around, and they'll hit something in the circuit and like cause the circuit to blow, right? It's got a lot of energy. So you imagine, like, you ever had like a short and like it blows up your computer or something like that, right? And the smoke comes out, right? When it's satellites in orbit, that same thing can happen. Our atmosphere protects us from a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
So the stuff comes in, and just because there's lots of atoms, it like bounces around and loses energy, right? So that's even true for black holes and stuff that can blow like X-rays and things like at our planet. And those things are hit atoms in the atmosphere, and they are absorbed, right? I mean, that's what the polar lights,
the aurora borealis.
Yeah, exactly. The aurora borealis is these atoms coming from the sun falling down into like the magnetic field
into the field. Yeah.
So the magnetic field is comes from the North Pole and goes to the South Pole, right?
Yeah.
So on the front, it's like stuff goes around us and bounces off, right? But on the edge, at the end, it's weaker and it can fall down into this hole, and that's how we have the aurora borealis. But when you have a very strong CME, a very strong solar flare, you got a lot of light, energy, everything all at the same time coming, and that can actually penetrate the magnetic field. That stuff that does fall down, like, can be absorbed by the atmosphere, but it can also like hit the electronics inside of a cell phone tower.
Yeah.
And that can knock out a cell phone tower. It can knock out, power grids, because you literally just have like an atom that is going really fast. So it's got lots of energy, right? It's like a bullet from a gun shot by the sun itself. And then, but it can be even more. It can be, 100 billion atoms, right? Like of stuff coming at us, charging stuff up, blowing stuff up by making connections, changing the voltage inside of like electronic devices and things like that. And that's how that happens. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. You see, this is okay. I'm going to mention it again. Talking about flat Earth, but this is why I watch so much about it. It's because because the people on YouTube who are on there debunking these people's wild theories. So they'll be like, the flat Earth will be like, we believe this, we believe that, and then the YouTube channels that I watch, they'll be like, well, that's not true because of this. So I'm now
you're learning the physics.
You learn the physics
cool.
about reality. And what was one thing I learned the other day? Oh yeah,
it's almost like thanks flat Earthers for being idiots.
It is. It's a little bit.
I got to learn something because you're an idiot.
There was what I learned about the human vision. So the human eye can see 3 miles, and that's in terms of sea level to the horizon.
3 miles.
Yeah, to the horizon.
I okay.
Around then.
I thought it was longer than that. I thought it was 18, but I'm not sure. So.
I think they say from because the flat Earth, this is how crazy this is. The guy was like, the human eye can see 3 miles, and the guy was like, talked to someone else and said to him, look up how far the human eye can see, and he said 3 miles. And then he said, how far away is the moon? The moon is 240,000 kilometers or whatever it is, or 230,000 miles.
I get it.
So you see what I'm getting here? Yeah. He's like, so why the fuck can we see the moon? And he's like, what the fuck? But then I'm thinking, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I would not be able to describe the physics behind why that is. Well, it's something about arc minutes, and it's like it's about angles. It's not about
right. So, but that's like but that's just like, if you take the Earth, right, which is, if you consider it as a circle, right, and you can imagine on one side of it, like there's a big pole, like a building sticking up, right, and like you look at it and you see like only half of it, right, because it's around the corner, right? And it's just like, there's a flag on the top of the mountain, right, and at the bottom of the mountain you can't see the flag. Right? And literally you can be like 99% of the way up the mountain and you still see the flag. In fact, you can actually see the flag at the bottom of the mountain, but you can't see it the entire way up until you crest the peak.
Yeah.
Because then you're going around the corner, right, onto the top of the mountain. You're like, oh, there's the flag again. Right?
Yeah.
Because you can literally be like, that's, 1,000 meters away. I see the flag, right, waving there at the top of the mountain. Barely. You see like a little piece of green waving in the wind, right? And you like lose sight of it as you climb up, and you're like, here's the mountain. You're climbing up the side. It's here. You can't see it. You're like climbing up. You still can't see it. Can't see it. And you come around the corner. Oh, I see it now.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, oh well, I can't understand it, and therefore, this goes back to what I said earlier, right? It's like, oh, well. The explanation someone gave me was confusing, but the explanation that the world is flat, this guy is so confident, speaking so confidently, knows exactly what he means. And he's like, the world is conspiracy, and if everybody's lying to me, that means that I don't have any responsibility.
But this is their excuse every time. Well, this is their argument. I don't understand it, therefore it must be bollocks. And it's just like, well, no, you just don't understand. I mean, I'm not sitting here pretending I understand it, but
it's a good thing you don't have to understand why your heart beats.
Yeah. Otherwise, you will just collapse. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like let's just like poke that one straight in the gut right there. Right? I mean, because if you did, you wouldn't. I'd be here. But even then, there's pieces about there's pieces I don't know, right? Like I'm a pretty fucking well-educated guy, and I know nothing. But that's the nature of Dunning-Kruger effect. The more you know, the more you realize oh my gosh, there's so much to know.
Oh, that's the other one, isn't it? That's the the Dunning-Kruger effect is when you think you're an authority on a subject and you're not. You're
right.
The other one, the imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is when you are very well educated on a subject, but then you just but then when you feel like you're not as much of an authority as you are.
Somebody else is speaking confidently, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to listen to them. You can literally be an expert, and like at the beginning, you'd be like, well, I am always learning new stuff.
Yeah.
And I might learn something new, so I'm going to listen to this person.
Yes.
Spew absolute trash.
Yeah.
Right? Just in order to like understand what they're saying, so I don't miss out on the opportunity to learn something new.
Yeah.
Because like my experience is always learning. And so you get into that like conundrum of, I mean, this is something that happens to me a lot. It's like, when should I speak up? When somebody's saying bullshit, right? I can speak up too early and lose the opportunity to like say something funny or to interject. But also, if I wait too long, people are like, "Oh, okay, no, we've decided already." The first thing we heard is like tells us all the truth.
The thing is, in my experience, if I hear something and I'm like, "That's wrong," and I'm 100% sure that that's wrong, I will interject and be like, no. But then you look like a bit of a know-it-all. But this is my girlfriend will be able to confirm this as well. That if we're having a conversation and we're not quite sure, I'll get my phone out and Google.
Yeah.
And she'll be like, "Oh yeah, you're Googling." I'm like, "Yeah, but it's nice to all have the correct information."
Yeah.
And we're learning here.
We are vastly more knowledge accessible humans than anyone in history, right? I mean, like I said, I study a lot, I read a lot, but I don't remember everything.
Oh no!
I mean, I forget shit all the time.
Oh, for me, it's in one ear out the other. Especially if I'm reading a book, it's just I'll enjoy it in the moment, and then if you was to ask me 3 weeks later, if I finished a book and you asked me, a week later after I finished it, what was the book about? I'd be able to tell you bits and bobs, but
it's
it's
stories though, right? Like it's when reading books that tell the stories and then relating those stories to your own life. That's what helps you remember things.
Okay, it's a perfect time to call it a day, I think. Thank you ever so much, Alan. It's always a massive pleasure to have you on.
Good times.
And have you in the pub and have a good chat. A fountain of knowledge, a redwood of hope.
Oh wow!
That's your
redwood of hope.
Yeah, if you're gonna ever run for presidency, feel free to use that as your kind of
redwood of hope.
Yeah,
aims for president.
Aims for president. I'd be voting for you anyway. But yes, so thank you very much, Alan. Thank you everyone for watching. This is the Seven Sisters Pubcast. Please like, subscribe, come down to the pub, have a couple of beers,
come down, have a pint,
throw some darts,
have a good chat.
But yeah, thank you very much. We shall see you very soon. Take care.